I'll set these right here.
Yeah, just in case. Otherwise.
All right, we're live. Here we go.
Back at it.
We're back at it. Talking about ice fishing tonight. You know, one of the things you and I get to do a ton of.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
I will say though, we did take a trip, the Mudhole crew,
Yeah.
up to the Great White North last year. It was
Different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was gonna say it was cool, but it was cold.
Very cold.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was neat. I will say, you know, we fished with Guy, Vince Hightree, Skinny Vinny. He's not skinny. He's a big guy, and his buddy Peter. They were awesome. And of course, you know, everybody that has taken our classes or knows about our class or knows about Mudhole in general knows about Buzz Butters. So Buzz was there as well, and he was the host with the most. He really was. You know, we rented a house, we got to fish, we got to do all that. So we are going to talk about ice fishing because those that fish on hard water probably should start looking at building a few rods pretty soon.
Yeah, it's coming up for you guys sooner than later. You know, down in Florida, we don't get much ice down here.
Not
Snow
much.
or ice or even cold weather, you know, as a matter for that. But
Yep.
yeah, we're going to be talking about some blanks that we recommend for certain applications of ice fishing.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about components as well, you know, which goes for grip selection,
Right.
reel seat selection, guide selection, because, you know, especially the guides are, I would say, probably an overlooked part of ice fishing. You really have to, you know, it really comes down to sizing, you know, what
Sure.
you're looking for. So,
Well, yeah, because, you know, you're matching it to the reel, you're matching it to what you're going to be doing. Are you fishing inside? Are you fishing outside? And then, like you said, the handle's pretty cool because you don't have to use a reel seat per se.
right.
You know, like on a bait casting rod, pretty much got to use a reel seat.
Yeah.
But on these, not so much. We're gonna talk about a little of that and show a new product that's coming.
Yeah, we got a new product that's still in the works that will be available, you know, probably leaning towards next month. But we're going to show it on the show just because it's a very helpful tool that will allow you guys for not only ice rods, but also, you know, fly rods, any ultralight rods, multi-piece blanks or rods.
But it does play well with this.
Right down this alley right here. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit. And,
Absolutely.
and
Talking
also,
about giveaways, of course.
Yeah, and the giveaways, we're going to be giving away a CRB Ice Rod Kit, an MHX Ice Rod Kit, and then also an all-in-one Turnkey Ice Rod Kit, which allows you to build 3 rods and all the supplies and equipment to do it. So
That's a
really
cool
good prize there.
Absolutely. All right, so we talked about what we're going to talk about. We showed some stuff. We're going to go through it. You guys are here, of course, for the demos, and as always, I know you stay for the giveaways. So I think, are we ready to get this thing going? We ready? Jay, how about it? Let's hit it. Let's talk about hard water fishing.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission.
All right, episode 79. Not that anybody's counting. So, 79. All right, we need to announce a new website.
Yes.
So, I know, you know, you've had a little involvement in that.
Just a little bit. Not a lot. Not a lot.
Well,
but
the great news is we've all had some involvement.
right.
You know, we can't say enough about the team here that handles that stuff.
Yep. And,
you know, we've gone through it, looked at it, given our 2 cents. Everybody's tried to come together on it. Certainly, it just launched today. There's a few new things, a lot of great features that I think you will like once you dive into it. I think it's really, really great. So you want to go over some of that stuff that?
Yeah, definitely. You know, some of the new features, we've got increased speed and reliability. That's one of the biggest ones for sure. You know, increased performance on all devices. That doesn't mean just desktop, but also your mobile view is enhanced now. You know, faster, simplified checkout. You know, we've got the features like, I think, Google Pay, Apple Pay. All of those are built in, makes it super easy to check out.
Right.
We've incorporated the blog into the website now.
Yeah.
So you can actually view the blog directly from you know, the website, and it's also shoppable. You can you can click these links and see the products right off the blog. So it's all, or right off the blog that's on the website now.
Yeah, and that's huge because for those that have been following along recently, and I would say maybe in the past 2 years, you know, we've been doing rod recipes. So we'll take a rod, we'll build it, we'll talk about it, why we built it this way, what we're doing with it, the guides, all of that stuff. So now, incorporated into the blog, you can go through and you can click on all those items, you can put them together, and then you can buy it just like that. So you don't have to go for one area of a different website that is a blog, try to come back to mudhole.com and shop those items. So that is a great, you know, option there. And then, of course, there is live chat.
Yes, which
So
is very helpful.
That's very helpful because that comes in here to us here at Mudhole. All the sales team, men and women, and the tech support people, and all that stuff. So you can do live chat and get answers to your questions, really, throughout the whole day. I mean, it's very, very good.
Yep.
So, yeah.
We got a video to roll over that real quick, or? Yeah, it looks like we do. Queuing it up right now. And then, of course, we got one of the questions that's been featured most today. I can't log into the new website. What do I need to do? So let's do the video first, and then we'll get to that question just in a second.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah, very cool. That just highlights basically the same thing we just talked about there. You know, and getting back to that question, for you guys that are having trouble logging in to the new website, if you actually go to the home page of the website, there's the first picture that pops up. Well, actually, I think it says Get Started. You can click that.
Yep.
And it actually highlights 3 different options on how to set up a new account for the website. I believe most people should have received an email that will allow you to open the email, you can click a link, and it will take you directly to the site. You can also create a new account directly off the website. And then I think the third option is if you just want to reach out to our live support, you know, get some help there. So a couple different ways.
Very cool. So since we're talking about ice fishing tonight, you know, the guys go through and they kind of catalog some products that we're going to talk about. You know, we've got a number of different items here that we're going to show on the show tonight. Those are going to be, of course, at mudhole.com/MHL. You have seen this feature probably in the last 5 or 6 episodes. It's been great because now you can go to one place, and with this new website, it makes it a breeze. So that's a great option there. And of course, we'll talk about all that stuff as we come through. With all of these live episodes, for those that get to watch it live, it's great. But remember, because we do see some questions that come up in the group, you know, Mudhole Live Rod Builders Workshop, it's on Facebook. We do see that stuff. All of these shows are cataloged on YouTube, and the team goes through and they timestamp stuff. So when we go from, let's say, one demo talking about handles to the next demo talking about guides, to the next demo talking about finish, all in one show, you don't have to scrub through an hour of a show and try to find all that stuff, you know, so you can go through and things are timestamped. So that's just something there that if you guys don't know about that, I wanted to touch on that because somebody I think earlier in the week was like, oh, did they do any videos on a chevron? We got a whole show on that. And then what you can do is you can go to that show and you can kind of go through the talking points of it and not listen to all of my bad jokes, and you can just go right to where you want to see us wrap that chevron. So it's a good way to do it. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, new product, maybe?
Yeah, so let's talk about, well, one revamped product and then
yeah.
one new product.
Good point.
So the revamped product is going to be our all-in-one Ice Rod Turnkey Kit.
Yeah.
Right, so we've taken that, like I said, we've revamped it just a little bit. We've included some of the newer, you know, options, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I was digging through the box not too long ago.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, we give them all the tape wrap or tape reamers now.
Yeah,
So,
yep.
yeah.
And we've, you know, upgraded the packaging a little bit. It actually comes with a pamphlet inside of it that's going to give you, you know, a list of contents for all of what's inside of it.
Yep.
A couple cool videos that you can use to, you know, use these tools that we're going to showcase in the show a little bit later.
Right.
But again, you get 3 rods in this kit. It's not just a 1 rod, you know, kit.
Right.
You can actually build 3 rods, and again, you can get all the tools and all the equipment comes in one box.
Yeah,
right?
it makes it really easy.
Makes it really easy, and that includes your, you know, your hand wrapper, your rod dryer, like you mentioned, the tape reamers, which are awesome to have.
You get IRHTs in there.
You get IRHTs, you
Handle
get
kit, yeah.
handle kits, guide kits, 3 blanks. You know, we could go on and on. You get your Pro Coach, your Pro Paste,
Yeah.
all that good stuff.
It's excellent.
Yep. Now, for the new product, and again, this is still in the prototype phase. You know, we've got it coming in very soon. As everyone else has been dealing with the delays, so have we. So it's
Sure.
slowed us down just a little bit, but we're back on track. And so this is going to be it. This is going to be the CRB tip support.
Yep.
And what this allows you to do,
I'm gonna grab this hand wrapper.
yeah, we'll show it a little bit later on in the show again, more than likely, when we get to the guide section. But what this allows you to do is essentially, we'll put it out here.
Yeah. So it will come like this, off of this stand, right?
Yeah, and it's a pretty secure, there you go,
Yeah, I was
pop
gonna
set,
say,
but
yeah.
it fits in there nice and snug.
So for those that have, this is a 4-spool advanced hand wrapper, okay? It's going to come like this, and it's going to replace one of these so imagine, you know, you get 2 of these, right? So you just, depending on which direction you like to wrap, it doesn't matter, you can turn this around. So you would just remove one of these out of the stand here. So I'm gonna put this one back in, okay? Snaps in, this one, over here.
So a little bit tighter fit on that one.
Yep. So that one is going to snap in here. Now, the best part is, you're gonna obviously have your extra piece here. This is going to have felt in it. We're going to have a band. This has got felt here. So in a sense, I'm going to hold this. Actually, would you hold this?
Sure.
So that we can turn it on its edge. So if you can imagine, it's going to lay in just like that. Rotate that up. Like
This way?
This, yep. So that's going to lay in there. So if you want to wrap your tip top, the tip top will be able to rotate inside of here. And of course, a guide will also be able to rotate inside of there as well, depending on where you're at. All right? So we just wanted to, it was easier to show it if we could hold it here and show you guys how that works. And of course, with an ice rod, you can, because they are a little flimsy all the way back in here, it makes it nice when you can have a guide in here or a tip top, depending on where you're at on this rod blank. Because we all know that when you start getting out here and there's some small guides, you might have a guide that you knock off. So you don't have to worry about going, oh, okay, well, this little tiny guide out on the tip top is not going to rotate inside of here. Most of the sizes of your runners will rotate inside of that. So it makes it really, really nice. And again, like I showed you, you just pop this side out, take that, pop it in there, and you're ready to rock. So
Yep. There you go.
perfect. I'll put this back over here so we don't. Snaps just like that. Cool.
Cool. And again, so that's very useful for ice rods, any multi-piece rods, any ultralight blanks that the diameter of the blank is really small and flimsy on the end, like you mentioned.
Yep.
That tip support is going to really help you out.
Absolutely. So that, yeah, there you go. First look.
Coming soon.
Coming soon. All right, so we mentioned that we went up to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
We flew into Milwaukee, and then we worked our way, because Milwaukee is east, right? So we worked our way west a little bit. We fished on a couple lakes. We actually went into Madison and fished on Monona Bay right there, which was pretty wild because, you know, I don't get to see a frozen lake, you know, where it's completely frozen over. So, you know, you're kind of going over an overpass and you're in Madison, so you can see, like, you know, big buildings, the university's there. And then you're like, oh, there's a bunch of people out in that field. The field is the lake that's frozen. So we got to fish there. We got to fish up a little farther north. Some of the areas we can't really disclose because I don't want to give away Skinny Vinny's secrets. But it was really, really neat. And the guys have a trailer for that episode. And of course, as we mentioned, we had Buzz Butters, we had Vince Hightree, and then of course I had Guffey there fishing with me. Yeah, it was a ball, you know, it was something cool, and I actually really, really would go back. So we're gonna roll this trailer, and this episode drops Friday, September 24th. So let's take a look at that. All right, what do you think?
Cool. Really cool.
Not too bad, huh?
Yeah, it's different too. You know, you guys get a lot of content for you know, freshwater fishing, you know, bass and flipping and heavy cover, and then the saltwater, and so it's cool to see a little different. You know, we even had trout. You know, a lot of trout footage before.
Yeah, some fly fishing stuff.
But the ice fishing's a little different. It's a little new. It's cool to see.
That was new for sure. So, all right, let's talk about picking a blank, okay? And Hunter, I know that we had talked about this earlier. You would venture to say, and of course, you know, this is, I'm not gonna hold your feet to the fire that this is the only option, but you kind of have to look at carbon versus fiberglass. Am I right?
Absolutely.
I mean, so why don't you walk us through that, if you would, maybe a little bit of the differences, and because there is, you know, like let's say an MB843 is a carbon blank, but it's rolled on a mandrel, it's not solid.
Right.
So a lot of the MHX carbon blanks are solid. So you have solid carbon, and then you have solid glass.
Glass, correct.
So
yeah. So it kind of goes in the lines of depend on what type of lures you're using, and also you know, maybe what kind of species you're going to target.
okay.
I would say that's probably a couple of your main factors, and of course, cost. You know, the difference between a fiberglass blank and you know, a carbon blank. There's going to be a little bit of price difference there.
Right.
There's going to be a little bit of difference in how that blank performs.
Sure.
You know, but you know, fiberglass is going to be your more economical choice. It's going to be really good for any finesse jigs, small bites, panfish, anything that you really need to see like a visual bite. They're great for.
Okay.
You know, and then your carbon is going to be typically, you know, a little bit, you know, maybe target species might be like walleye, a little bit of the larger species.
Right.
And again, you're using probably larger baits. You're going to be using some jigging spoons that are going to be larger, maybe even some plastic baits that are going to be larger. Yeah. And it's carbon is more responsive, you know. So you're still going to have great bite detection, but it's just different type of bite, I guess you could say.
Okay.
And then again, you know, you're going to get probably a little more sensitivity out of carbon, whereas, you know, your fiberglass isn't going to be quite as responsive, quite as sensitive.
Sure.
You know, but again, fiberglass has its pros. It's more durable. It can detect those small bites that sometimes a carbon blank can't.
Yeah, which
Because
is interesting.
it really is. It's a strange thing, especially like those negative bites to where the fish might have your bait and kind of sit there with it and almost make your line go slack.
Right.
It can detect those small bites sometimes because the tip is very limber. Right. It's going to have more appeal to flex a little bit more.
For sure.
Because it's just the nature of the blank. Typically, carbon is going to be a little bit stiffer.
Yeah.
And maybe, just it acts a little bit different as far as the action goes.
Yeah.
There's pros and cons to both. And again, it kind of comes down to those first two things I talked about, what kind of lures you're using and what kind of species you're targeting. And that can help your decision to make what kind of blank you want.
Yeah, for sure, because like you had mentioned with if you're like jigging a spoon, it would be tough with maybe a power noodle because it has such a super soft tip in it, but it's got a lot of mid and butt section, whereas like something, this is a solid carbon and it's the 36. So like it's got a lighter tip, but you can certainly work this and, pop the rod and work that jig very, very well. Whereas it's funny because you talk about sensitivity and we always think, okay, well the rod is sensitive because I can feel that bite. Mm-hmm. I can feel, some guys, I can feel them breathe on it. It's like, great. But, that's a rod that, is light, high modulus, it's a different type of sensitive because then when you have something like a power noodle, which is this, and this, you can see how, the tip on this is almost comical, really. Like it's got a lot of, kind of mid and butt, but the tip is so limber and it's so soft that now that's very sensitive to, like you said, a negative bite or, a positive bite. So it's almost a different type of sensitivity when we're talking about it. And when we were up there fishing, and of course this gets to Ryan's question, what would you recommend for a crappie rod? And, I used a lot of different blanks up there because I didn't really, I'm not an expert. I didn't know. So I wanted to try to figure out what I liked, and it was more based on how they were eating it. Mm-hmm. So we had a tungsten jig with a little spike on the end of it, and we would drop it down and we would put it in the zone. So you're watching the flasher, and that's in the zone, and of course you can tell the difference between your lure or jig head and a fish. You can tell the difference. So just with a line. So as you would move that up and down, you could see that fish get near it, or you would just watch. And if he ate it, sometimes with the way that the jig is, and because that power noodle is so soft in the tip now would relax and it would come straight. So then you knew that he ate it. Yeah. So we caught a lot of different kind of panfish on that. And then of course we got into some crappie in an area that we were at. So I was using that same blank for that. But if you didn't want to use the power noodle and rely on the power noodle's very soft tip, you could also do something like we have here. And this is a carbon blank. So this is the MLMF, okay? So this is a CIB, medium light, moderate fast is what the specs fall under, right? And what it's going to be is you're going to use a spring bobber. So you can use one like this. This one is actually an actual spring that Skinny Vinny makes. And you can see that spring moves you just breathe on it and it moves, whereas the blank doesn't move at all. There is no movement in that rod blank at all, and that spring bobber is doing really everything. So that's telling me what I need to know. Yet, if you want to use a carbon blank because of the way that it either fights the fish or depending on, the weight of the jig or the lure or whatever you're using, you can do that. So depending on how you put this together, you can utilize the power noodle tip, or you can also utilize a solid carbon blank because maybe you like the action of that solid carbon blank, yet put you a spring bobber on there. And of course, that one was custom made, and then we've got one here that we sell too. This is the Ice Strong style, and they come in a number of different powers, I guess you would call them.
Yeah.
You know, they have different, you know, this titanium wire has a little bit different flex based on, you know, is it a light, medium, heavy, you know, whatever their power rating is. So depending on how you're fishing it, what you're fishing with, you know, the weight of your jig, because you don't want this thing humped way over the whole time, and it's like, well, that's not exactly what you want. You want a little bit of give, but you want it pulled down enough so that if a fish eats it and it relaxes it, you can see that movement.
Yeah.
But you don't want it just 90 degrees straight down like you got a 4-ounce weight on it. So, so that's kind of, you know, expanding on the carbon / fiberglass deal, and of course getting somebody's question out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Too.
And so many of the bites are visual in ice fishing. You know,
Yes.
hence the spring bobber. Hence why a lot of these. Let's see. Actually, which one did you have a few minutes ago?
What are we talking about?
For instance, on this one.
Okay.
It's a little bit harder to see, but for instance, these wraps are all blue up until we get to the very tip, and we have an orange and yellow side-by-side little color combo.
Yeah.
And that's purely for visual, to see that little bit of color at the end of your rod tip.
Correct.
If that moves, changes, goes up, goes down, you got a bite, basically. Right. And you'll see that with a lot of people will use white thread, any kind of fluorescent, orange, pink,
Exactly.
Green, yellow, any of those colors. And of course, with the addition of the spring bobbers, which again, you'll see most of the spring bobbers come in those bright colors.
They're hot.
Yeah,
sure.
the hot pink, the orange, the yellow. That's for a reason, so you can see that bite.
Of course. So yeah, that, so to kind of summarize maybe a couple blanks, some of the more popular blanks. So
Yep.
I talked about the CIB 36 MLMF, okay? That one is a solid carbon blank, 36 inches, medium light, moderate fast. So that one, I would say, you know, for an ice rod blank, it might even be a little more, you know, light, but a little more fast. But it, you know, I'm very new at this. So some of y'all might say like, oh no, that's whatever. I'm just trying to give you some real world newbie ice fishing, what I picked up while I was there. So I really liked that blank a lot. That's the one I built with the fly reel on it, the cigar grip. On our YouTube channel, we've got the rod recipe for this one because this is the one I used on the ice. And then we're going to walk you through why I did what guides here in a little bit. We also took up a 28-inch ultralight. So that's an ultralight power and a fast action. It's got a really quick hook set, and that is something that we used when we had some small spoons, little jigging wraps, or even a little bit larger panfish jig. Something that we were actually working a little bit more rather than just a little tungsten jig and a spike, getting it into the zone and kind of whatever. You know, if those fish were a little more reactive to working a spoon or a jig in their face, we would pick up that rod blank just because it was better for that.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, you know, we talked about power noodle.
Right, I was going to say the PPN-36, that's the Precision Power Noodle.
Yes.
I love that name. You know?
Yep.
That's going to be really good for those small tungsten jigs like you talked about.
Yep.
Very sensitive tip, and when we say sensitive in that aspect, it just is very limber, and you can see even the smallest bites.
Yeah.
And you know, that's...
it's called an extra fast, but that's,
yeah.
it's like a...
I'm not sure if we have...
It's like a 4X fast. This one is.
Is that it? Okay.
Yeah, this is the
PPN.
PPN.
Yeah, so
it's
that's...
like a 4X
Yeah,
fast.
I mean, it just...
Yeah, it's just almost comical.
It's all
how
tip.
fast
That's all it is. And again, I mean, there's plenty of power, even though this is a very small diameter blank.
Oh, you can lift on them.
There's a lot of power down here, especially
doubt.
if, you know, this is a fiberglass blank, so it can take, it has a lot of lifting power for the size of the blank.
Yeah.
But the tip, though, it's, you know, it's really funny.
Yeah. And gosh, to be honest, like you were saying with the fiberglass being so durable, you know, if you're a guide and you're having to like load 10 or 15 rods on a sled and pull it and stuff, like you're not going to hurt those.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know maybe how you're fishing, but I'd lean on a power noodle if I'm just handing it to somebody like me who's never been up there, or, you know, you don't want Tina to take a spill on the ice as she falls and breaks the rod, you know, whatever. You're probably not going to have that happen with the precision power noodle.
Yeah.
So.
And then the last one we got to highlight here, it's the CIB, the 42. And now the 42 is a medium power.
Okay.
So this is really like the workhorse for your larger game fish, you know, your walleye, your pike, your lake trout. It's going to be the larger spoons, the jigging wraps, that kind of sort.
Yeah.
And it's 42 inches, so it's going to be a little bit longer too.
Yeah, and that's the one that I caught the northern on in the video. And we used it for that instance. We kind of used it more for its bigger fish fighting ability than lure fishing. Yeah. So that was with a live bait. We were using a shiner there, put it out, and that was merely, you know, we had probably maybe 8-pound braid on it. You know, we had a little bite leader and stuff like that to deal with that northern. So we were using that just for the sheer power to fight the fish. And that one we actually had with, you know, a pretty standard like spinning rod setup, really. You know, you're going to have your barrel reel seat. We had a little rear grip, little fore grip. This is something that looks a lot more like a spinning rod than maybe just an ice rod. It just so happens to be 42 inches long and an ice rod. Yeah. So this is something that, you know, looks a little more spinning rod-ish, and that's the 42, just like the one we used up there. But again, that's why we use that. So that kind of breaks down maybe our most popular blanks. And, you know, over the course of 3 days, we got to use all of those because depending on where we fished and how we fished and what was biting, and, you know, we had a whole fleet of them. And you can get away with, if you want to start with maybe 3 or 4 different models, go from that model, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yep. You want to give something away?
Let's do it.
All right.
So we got a CRB Ice Rod Kit to give away. So I'm sure we'll see what we got. Maybe let the lucky winner pick out maybe which blank they're leaning towards or something to that effect.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. All right, coming out of Facebook, the CRB Ice Rod Kit. Our first winner of the night is Daniel Johnson.
Nice.
Congrats, Daniel. Great prize.
Very cool. Awesome. All right. Let's see. Did we miss any questions there? Maybe we'll address a question here. If we let's see. Daniel, I am not sure what a dock demon is. I'm not going to lie to you. I just don't know what a dock demon is. Can an ice rod be built with the intent as a panfish rod similar to a dock demon? Am I thinking that maybe he's like trying to shoot docks? You know how those guys do for crappie and stuff?
Possibly.
I just don't know what it is. So a lot of these blanks, though, I mean, there's a ton of them. Not only in the MHX, but in the CRB lineup. And I would think, if I'm just imagining what you're talking about in a dock demon, of maybe making really short casts or even like pulling it back a little bit and doing a little bow and arrow vibe, I don't see why not. Because if you're using, whether it's a beetle spin or a road runner or, you know, some kind of a lure that you're trying to shoot up under a dock, you absolutely could. You know, yeah. Now not something like a power noodle, but you're going to need something that has more of a, you know, that moderate fast, so you can flex it and get it to, you know, kind of uncoil.
Yeah, it's a little too stiff.
Yeah,
you know, we also have, depending on the length that you want, if you are going towards like a shooter style blank, we have a series in MHX. Mm-hmm. 4 to 5 models, I think.
Yeah.
Now they're longer. They're in like the 6-foot range, I believe.
Yeah. Might be a little too much power too.
Could be. It just
But again, if I knew what a dock demon was,
yeah,
or whatever that was. But it sounds cool though. I'm not gonna lie. If I'm imagining correctly, I could see it being cool. So Wendell Barnes was wondering, if you paint an ice rod, if you could do a spar varnish dip over the paint instead of a clear coat. I mean, I would kind of consider the spar varnish dip to be kind of a clear coat. I know Buzz this is a hydro dip blank. So some of the times they are using like a spray urethane. Other times they are actually using, like a clear coat like you would on a vehicle, but you just have to be sure that it's got a flex agent in it. So with the spar varnish, I don't see why not. I don't see why you couldn't paint it and then dip it and hang it. The good news is it would certainly be easier to dip something like this than try to dip like an MB 843.
It's true.
So I don't see why not. I might would give that a whirl. So cool.
Let's see what else we got here.
That one's going to be guides. We're going to get to that in a minute.
So moving to Anchorage in 3 months, never been ice fishing. What blank should I start with? I would say if you're trying to target more panfish, go with that precision power noodle, the PPN 36.
Yeah.
And maybe if you're targeting a little bit, larger fish outside of the panfish realm, maybe go with like that CIB 42, or even maybe like a 36M if you wanted a shorter one.
Yeah, I feel like that 36, this is that ML, MF. I really feel like you could do a lot with this.
Yeah.
Just
Good
depending
all
on
around.
if you're catching maybe some kind of trout or some kind of, and I feel like it's light enough if you put a spring bobber on it to fish that way. Or if you need to jig a spoon or a small jig, I think that would be good. I think that's why it's one of the more popular ones.
Cool.
So
There you
I'd
go.
probably lean on a couple of those. So, all right, we need to talk about building a handle.
Yep.
So there is a part that is very important. Hunter's going to show you and tell you why. It's called the IRHT.
Yeah, so this is our ice rod handle tube, I guess is what it's formally called.
Yep.
So basically it's a 10-inch piece that acts as, it kind of stiffens up the butt section of your ice rod blank.
For sure.
So it has a, I think a 1/4-inch OD.
Yes.
So most grips will actually fit. Let's see, that one's actually going to be too small.
That one's reamed out.
That one's reamed out, so I don't have one here.
Yep.
But most of the time, if you get any cork grips, anything like that, it's going to slide over this handle tube perfectly. Now, what you can do with this is in turn, you're going to slide this, put a couple arbors or whatever you're going to do on your ice blank here. You're going to slide this tube over your ice rod blank.
Mm-hmm.
And again, what that's going to do is once you have it glued up there, it's going to stiffen up the back portion of this ice rod. Now, how that helps is once you have, we'll take this one for example, once you have, if you did not use this tube and you simply mounted your components to this rod blank,
Okay.
the adverse effects of that is most of these ice blanks bend all the way back into the handle section.
Yeah, you can like hump them over pretty far.
So what you're going to have to do is, once you have a really good bend in this ice rod blank, if you start getting back into the butt section that starts bending, what that can do is actually start cracking, not your components per se, but the epoxy.
Yeah.
It can start
separate.
It'll start separating the
Gotcha.
reel seat from the grips and whatever else you got down there. So again, this tube, once it's mounted on here, will stiffen up the back of this butt section, and it will kind of counteract any bend that you might have in this butt section.
Okay.
And of course, you can cut this if you need to.
Right.
So what a lot of guys do, well, they'll mount their components, whether it's their reel seat, their grips, they'll mount it on the tube first.
Okay.
And then from there, once everything is dried, you can mount the tube onto your rod blank. And again, you can customize this to fit. If you only need 5 inches or 8 inches, or whatever it might be,
Yeah.
you can cut it as needed.
Perfect. Now, one of the really, really nice things about the IRHT is, well, there's a couple things, of course. Let me have that guy.
Yep.
Let me show you. So you can actually, if you're building multiple ice rods, and you kind of have a little bit of a assembly line or a little mini ice rod factory going on in your basement up north, you don't have to build it in order like we typically have to do a casting rod and a spinning rod where you're putting your grips down from tip to butt and sliding it. You can actually start wrapping guides. You could put finish out here because most of the time when you're using a blank that needs an IRHT, it has a small enough diameter that you can actually put your handle on from the butt side. So that makes it nice if you want to glue your handle stuff to the IRHT, set it aside, wrap guides, that's dry now, we're going to come back and mount it, and then now we're ready to go. So it certainly saves time and it helps. And if you want this, because it is very rigid, you can actually extend a rod blank. So I don't know what blank this is, but we'll call it a 36. If you wanted to take this 36-inch rod blank and make it a 40, if you wanted to make it a 42, you know, you can actually make sure I wouldn't just put 2 to 3 inches in here. I would probably try to stay safe and maybe do it 4 to 5 inches, because you said this is a 10, right?
10.
Yeah, so I would try to get, 4 or 5 inches, mount it. I just would be very afraid that if you only put that much in there that you might not get a good enough bond, but I could be wrong. So, you guys maybe want to give it a whirl. But you can now extend this blank out. So it makes it really, really nice. So this is something that I would buy 10 of them and make sure you got them on hand, because you can do a lot of different things with them. It's not just, oh, well, I got to glue my handle up and that's it.
Yeah.
So you can,
and this can be used on not all, but almost every single ice blank that CRB and MHX sells.
Sure.
There's only a handful, once you get up to, I think, the 42,
yep,
the 50, once you get up to those larger butt diameters for those blanks,
yeah.
This, you can't really use this anymore just because the ID is going to be too small to go all the way down to your butt section.
And really, when you start to get up into that range, you probably don't need that.
You do not.
And if you really feel like you do, or you want to mount your handles on their own and you're doing kind of custom stuff, a lot of guys go to like an aluminum or a carbon arrow shaft. You can go buy them at your local, archery supply place. You can cut them just like you cut a blank or anything like that, and you can build on that. So if you really need to open that diameter up just so that, you can use, that you can't use the IRHT, you can use that
Yep.
carbon or aluminum arrow shaft.
Yep. I would say several of the ones that are up here right now are using this.
A bunch of them.
Yeah.
And you can kind of tell that SK2, look at the blank diameter in it, and then look at the diameter between the reel seat. So this blank is, you can see, you can really flex it back here into the handle, and then of course your blank diameter out here, and then your blank diameter in here definitely has the IRHT inside of this. But it's great because now you can actually do a little decorative work on this, which out here on this tiny blank diameter makes it a little tougher. So use the IRHT and then add a little more decorative in there. So yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of handles,
yes,
we might as well kind of dive into that a little bit.
Yeah.
So one of the downfalls, I would say, of ice rods is since they're such a small diameter, it doesn't really give you many options of adding decals or, a lot of thread work.
Yeah.
It's a little bit harder to deal with on a really small diameter blank, adding those decorative touches.
of course,
But that's where your handle comes into play, right?
no doubt.
Because as you saw here, this is the Magic Marble, right?
Yeah.
We got some Magic Marble grips, there.
Yeah, show that carbon one there.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
So on this one, looks like we've taken a carbon fiber, like a CFX style grip, and incorporated a MHX decal in there, and then epoxy over top of that. So this grip usually would have a little bit of texture to it,
Right.
but it is a lot smoother with this finish on top of it. And of course, we got some finish down here on this too. But you could add college decal, fish decal, custom text decal, anything and everything. You can use that space. And these bands are actually what are going to hold your reel foot, each side of your reel foot, to this grip. So again, we're not really using a reel seat.
Right.
Our grip here is, and these bands are essentially the reel seat.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, because neither one, well, this part down here in the butt section is really designed to be a butt section. But these are CFX grips that you can buy right off the shelf here at Mudhole. This is just, you know, a tapered rear grip. You could also use their tapered foregrip depending on what length you want. And then this is just their probably, what is that, like a 125 butt or a 150 butt?
I think 150.
And then with the EVA cap that it goes with. And now you have the grips on your ice blank. You can put finish on them. Before the question comes up, because we get this question a lot, put a coat of finish on the carbon before you put a decal. You really need a smooth surface. So don't just stick the decal to the textured carbon grip. Put a really nice coat of finish, make it just mirror perfect smooth, put that decal, and then come back and add more finish over the top of it. So.
Yeah, and the same kind of style here. But this time we have cork instead of a carbon fiber grip. We still have our decal on there. And then also, is this the one? Yes, this has the...
He's mortised it.
Yeah, it's mortised. So it actually has, you guys, there's no way you can probably see that. A little bit of change in glare or light there. But this side right here where the real foot would sit is actually flat, so it's mortised. And that's just going to help you with your reel having a little bit of stability.
Yep.
All that does there.
Very cool.
So that's cool. So carbon fiber, custom cork. Again, this is another custom cork you can do.
Yeah.
And you'll notice almost all of these do have finish applied to the grips.
Pretty much, yeah. You know, I mean, some of them don't, but, you know, the EVA one, you know, the EVA here, this does not have it. And actually, Buzz went in and cut small grooves in the EVA so that when he rolls those bands on it, you know, it's got a groove for those bands to sit in like that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a neat, you know, option there as well.
So this one is be like your minimalistic, I guess you could say, you know.
Yeah.
We've got two small little cork pieces, one on the front, one on the back. And then we have a Fuji, was that like a...
You walked into that one. I do not know the part number of that. But it's like the Fuji ergonomic, is it an ER?
Completely
something?
Lost me.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell you. Well, stumped me on that one.
Oh well.
Stumped myself, I
There
guess
he
you'd
is.
say.
Yeah, but that's a great seat for that. Now, let's talk about this carbon tubing deal, because some people asked me about this one that you see here. I'll let you hold that one.
Cool.
And I'll get this one. So these handles are just a product of, now am I going to ask you this part number two? So we sell carbon tubing like this, okay? And what we also have is we have the arbors that fit perfectly inside. They come in two different sizes. These tubes come in a 920 and a 980, right? And then, in addition to the tubing and the arbors, we also have caps to fit them. So you'll see like this cap here has a solid end in it. So that cap fits in the end of the carbon tubing here. So it makes a really nice flush piece, okay, right there. And then the other cap has a hole in it. So this cap is the one that goes on the front, and the blank slides right through it. It fits perfect. It's nice and compact. What it allows you to do is it allows you to use the carbon tubing in a number of different lengths as a base. So this tubing is very light. You can do decorative thread wraps. You can paint it. You can marble it. You can put abalone over the top of it like I did here. You're simply using this carbon fiber tubing as a base to work off of, and then do your decorative work. Now, a really, really great rod builder told us that we should use rescue tape here. So what I did is I wrapped this section a few times to show what it looks like when it's built up a little bit. And then this one is just one band around here. You can kind of see the difference there depending on, you can stack this a little more if you want. You can use a little bit less of it if you want to make sure that your work shows through. So this is something that it will not leave any adhesive behind. It is a silicone tape that adheres to itself. A lot of times they call this rescue tape, and you can actually buy it in a roll just like this. it actually resembles, if depending on how old you are and if you ate fruit snacks, it kind of looks like fruit by the foot is what it looks like. So when you peel this off, it has a little plastic piece in between it so that it does not stick to itself. And then I actually take this width and I cut it in half. It cuts very well with razor blades or a nice pair of sharp scissors. And then what that'll do is it adds a little grip. You know, it's not like sticky, but it's almost like wind grip kind of texture. So that'll give you something to hang on to. It'll mount your inline reel, your spinning reel, anything to that grip. Plus, it'll allow you to show off all your cool custom work, whether it's abalone or your favorite team. You know, if you got to have that Packer rod out there on the ice on Saturday before the game on Sunday, you don't want to cover up that that Packer decal. So, got to have it.
Yeah, the abalone is a really cool touch. I mean, you just don't see that a lot in ice rods. It's more of a saltwater rod thing, you know. So it's really cool to see that.
That was one of those laying in bed at night, like, hey, maybe I'll just do that, because I saw so many people do, you know, really cool tiger wraps or stickers or paint or whatever, and I was like, man, I've always been an abalone fan. You know, I use it on inshore rods and stuff like that, so I'm like, yeah, we got a big sheet of it. We're just going to wrap it around one time. And, oh, and what we did is on the underside here, I had the guys do a custom decal, and underneath here is the rod decal. So without having to put the decal out here on the blank, I put it underneath the reel seat, and I know it's hard to see. Oh, there it is, there it is. Nice. So I've got the model number out here. I've got the specifications back here. And then, of course, the reel seat, the foot, sits right in here. So you don't cover up your decal, and you got a place there to put it. And it's also hidden, so, you know, you're not going to see it when you're fishing. But if you want to know which one you got, boom, there we go. So
there you go.
Teamwork makes the dream work. That's what it is right there.
Cool. So a lot of different options for you guys to get creative with your handles. We also got a good question. Ross, best arbors to use under the carbon tubing. Ross, I would go with the polyurethane, like the RAS arbors, you know, the full length ones. I like those because you can take them, and I typically don't use them as the full length. I'll cut them in tiny little pieces. Yeah. And then you can use those and stagger those throughout, whether you use the IRHT or directly to the blank, whichever one you do there.
Because if you're using this tubing, though, we have perfect fitted, and of course I'm not going to put you on the spot with that part number. I'm sure the guys will find it and post it, but they are little carbon donut arbors. And the great part about that is Hunter was saying they got an ID on the arbor of 250. So you just glue it to the IRHT, and then it slides perfectly inside of this tube, and then you can put, you know, 4 or 5 of them there. And then what was the other part number of the arbor that you were saying? The RA?
The RAS.
Yeah, the RAS, that one is a great one to go inside of like your reel seats and some other stuff like that. So yeah, it's perfect. Awesome. Will, what rod caught the pike in Wisconsin? How was the fight? The fight was incredible. It was, you know, because for a couple days, you know, you're not really doing a whole lot of fighting. You're just doing some reeling, you know, and you're just reeling up 10, 15 feet, and then you got to fish. And, you know, he's not big, but it was fun because, you know, seeing him on the flasher and trying to get him to eat was cool. And then all of a sudden, you hear the drag going off. You know, we gotta run over there and grab that shiner has just gone off. And yeah, it probably felt like the fight was 5 times as much as it was, because now he's like zip and drag, and of course it's wild because the line's like down in the hole, but he's over there somewhere, you know, because he's under the ice. So that was pretty cool. But it's neat. The guys got really good footage of it, and I would say if anybody can make ice fishing look cool, it's the guys here in the video and editing. So we had a ball. So yeah, on Friday, when that episode drops on the 24th, be sure to watch it.
All right, Brandon's got a good question, then we'll move on to a giveaway. Do you recommend the tube if you are using just a full handle like cork? Yes, absolutely. Whether you're using a full length handle, split grip, just a real seat and a couple pieces of cork. Anytime you're using a blank that's not, on the upper, 42 to 50 inches, anything that doesn't have a strong butt section, I guess you could say, that's going to be bending into that butt section, you're going to want to use an IRHT. It's just kind of a safety net.
It really is.
It doesn't harm your build or hurt your performance. It's only going to help you.
Because I was going to say, if I had a piece of cork, like, I think we've all broken a cork grip. And it doesn't take much. Once it's glued and everything, if it's got too much flex in it, you can crack it, you can break it, and you're just like, I just should have listened to Hunter and used the IRHT. It's cheap and it's very easy to use, and now I don't have a cracked grip. So yeah, I'm with you. Just use it, trust me. So.
All right, let's do giveaway number 2.
Yeah.
We're gonna be doing a MHX Ice Rod Kit. A lot of good options in there. Let's get a winner. What we got there, guys? Giveaway number 2. Jeremy Trotta.
Cool.
I got that right. Trotta?
Yeah, that's the MHX multi-option rod kit.
Cool. Congrats, Jeremy. Great prize.
No doubt.
All right, let's talk about guides.
Now it's guides. Guides 101 and 102 and 103. So we have a couple different options.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this earlier. Why don't you walk us through? You can do some guides. I'll do some spacing.
Okay.
We'll attack it like that. What do
Cool.
you think? Cool.
So when it comes to guides, we've kind of broken this down into 3 options. You got your standard guides, which could be like your CRB Performance, Elite, LZR is highly recommended. You got your SSR style of guides, which is more of like your metal ring guides, right? That don't have a ceramic.
Big fan.
And then the third option that we recommend would be like a recoil. They actually have a specific series of ice guides that are rated to go below 0, which just sounds crazy.
Leave me at the house.
Anyway, so a couple of benefits. If you guys were to choose a standard ceramic ring, a couple of things you want to look for is, you don't want to get carried away with guide size. You don't want to be using a size 30 guide, right?
Sure.
Most of these guide sets are going to start with either like a 20 or a 16. And they're going to go down to like an 8 or a 6, right? So for instance, we could probably use this one. I would say that right there is probably a size 16.
Probably.
And we're probably going to do a 12, 10, and looks like we've even got a single foot running guide is probably going to be a 6.
Yep.
So this is a very traditional guide train that you can use, and it would work great. Yep. And again, these appear to be LZR guides.
Yeah, they are.
So what's something you want to look for is when you are choosing a ceramic style guide, is you want to choose one that has a very thin ring, right? Yes. Which you're going to get into this a little bit later on the whiteboard maybe, but your goal for the guides on your ice rod is you want this opening, whether we're using an SSR, a recoil, a ceramic guide, is you want that opening to be fairly large.
Yep.
You don't want to be going down to, say, a micro guide, a size 4, because that opening is going to be very small and it's going to be very prone to icing up quickly.
Yes.
So the larger openings, and again, when you're using a thinner ceramic ring, like an LZR, the opening inside of this guide is going to be larger, right?
Absolutely.
And that also goes for your SSR guides. For instance, this appears to be probably a 20.
Yeah, it could be a 25.
Could be a 20 or 25.
But again, that's on that 42M. So.
Right. So a little bit heavier of an ice rod, so we got a little bit larger guide as well.
Yep.
The huge benefit to these is obviously not having a ceramic, don't have to worry about any breakage there.
Right.
These guides are very inexpensive, so for a 4, 5, 6 guide set, you're not spending much money at all.
Correct.
Very durable, very economical, and also, again, back to the point, with a very thin ring, whether it's ceramic or metal, you're going to be less prone to these guides icing up, and nobody wants that, right?
No.
So we talked about our LZR, which is our ceramic. We talked about our SSR, and then the third option would be You got some right there. Perfect.
Who's this guy?
So the recoil,
Too
everyone
hot.
I'm sure
I
is
did that so you could pull on it.
everyone is familiar with the recoil guides. They're known for being the bounce back guides. You know, they're very durable as well. And again, we're not dealing with any ceramic rings, so we know our opening for these guides is going to be larger than the normal. You know, say if we're doing a standard or performance style, you know, ceramic ring. And again, these guides are rated down. This specific series of ice guides from Recoil is rated down to temperatures well below 0. So you don't have to worry about any kind of breakage or, you know, the metal or the stainless becoming a little more susceptible to breaking.
Sure.
So great guides to use there. I would say if I had to choose out of all of them, I'd probably go with SSR. Yeah. Again, you know, they're very economical price-wise. They're super durable, and we have them in 4 different color styles, so you got a lot of different options there.
Yeah.
And the frames too, you know, for instance, like this style, these are what's referred to as a match style frame or a high frame guide.
Yep.
So, you know, I would say this is probably 12 or 16, but we have the height of a, you know, say a size 20 guide.
For sure.
So you get the extra height, but you can still, you know, go down to a smaller ring. So that's very helpful there. You know, we have, what, 3, 6, 7 guides on here. Mm-hmm. And this blank, or this rod, is still very, very lightweight. There's nothing to it.
Right.
So I think for the bang for your buck, I would go with SSRs. Those just seem to be more and more popular. So
For sure.
yeah.
Awesome. So let's talk about spacing a little bit. And before I go over the board, I'm going to give you guys a couple visuals here, a couple things to think about, and then we'll draw it out on the board as well. So one of the questions was, Bill Leary Jr., why is the guide spacing on ice rods so close as compared to other rods? Why do you need, say, 4 to 5 guides and only 24 to 36 inches? So what we have to deal with in terms of guides and spacing on a rod, an ice rod, that you typically don't have to deal with on, you know, an NBA 43 is probably, I would venture to say that, you know, you're only going to have, let's say you'll have 10, 11 guides on an NBA 43. You've got, you know, probably that much of the rod blank that has no guides on it, okay? Because that's not going to flex at all. Whereas with an ice rod blank, you could very well have it flex all the way back here into the handle. So we're looking at a blank here that out in the tip, it kind of reacts a little bit like an extra fast, you know, jerkbait rod, but because of the power that it has back here, or lack thereof, we have to be careful that we don't cut this short on guides. So what you don't want to have happen is, if this rod blank is bent way over like this, and you've only got, you know, a few guides on it, you're going to create really sharp angles between all these. So this one is even more so than what you're talking about, Bill. This one has 2, 4, 6, 7 guides on it where it really needs it because of the way that the tip reacts. And then also, if you really put a lot of force into this, you want to be sure that you don't have very sharp angles. So you have to be conscious of what length you're dealing with, what power you're dealing with, and then of course, what reel you're going to use. So there's a number of different kind of reels. Of course, you've got your spinning reel that so many ice rods are built on. You can, if you want, now granted you're not going to be casting this, but it would still make sense to have some sort of a clean transition out to the tip, because you are going to have to flip the bail and you want that jig or spoon or whatever to fall, and to fall cleanly and unobstructed. So if you have a really poor guide train, it's going to be, you know, kind of herky-jerky. It's not going to want to flow out of the guides coming off of a spinning reel especially. Now, you might have to worry a little more about the height of the guide when you have a spinning reel, because the line obviously is going to be a little bit farther off the blank. But then when we're talking with something like this inline reel, which I actually particularly like, you've got the line is going to come off the top of the reel here, not the bottom of the reel down here, like maybe you would assume. I kind of assumed that it would be this direction because I had never used one of these before, but it actually comes off the top. So between having this style reel that the line is fairly close to the blank, this rod blank is the CIB 36 ML MF. So you have a really kind of a nice bend through that rod blank, but you don't get a lot of flex down here. So I can push this guide out. I don't have to have a really, really tall guide backed up here because there's no flex back here. Because you also have to think, yeah, I could hang like a Clorox bottle on here and probably get it to flex back here, but you're probably not going to catch something like that often or all the time. So you can push this guide out. You don't need such a tall guide. And then do a nice quick transition, and then you've got a guide train that kind of in a very mini version looks just like a concept guide set that you would use on your drop shot rod with LZRs or your inshore rod. So let me show you guys this on the whiteboard. Oh, and of course you have the fly reel. Now the fly reel is a little different because you do have a line that comes off the bottom, not off the top. But you can use, because it comes at a sharp angle, you can actually use, you know, a pretty good concept style guide. So I pushed this one out again because it didn't flex too deep in the handle and ran it out and got down to the single footers. These are the REC ice guides. So you can kind of see, you know, this, to be honest with you, probably is a little sharp right there for me, but I probably could have added a little extra height on that guide. But again, that's my first one, so don't fry me on live. So we'll talk about, I'm going to show you here on the board what I was talking about. So in a sense, we've got a rod blank, we've got one here, we've got one here. Keep in mind, if you have something like the PPN 36, you have to account for the fact that that rod blank is going to be like this, okay? So you cannot just put one guide here and a tip top, you know, because you're going to have very, very sharp angles. You do not want your line to come to here and like this. That's a no-no. And we should all know that from the last time I was standing at this board. But what you do want to be sure is, this is where your blank deflection comes in, because a power noodle is kind of built just like that. So you don't need as many guides in here, but over there you notice now you've got 3 or 4, 5 guides out here in the tip where you're like, why? That's ridiculous. Why do I need that many guides? But remember, from before, we try to cut it in half here. You got to have a guide right here, maybe one here, maybe one here, maybe one here. Okay? So that's going to help you around that curve, because when you have like an inline reel, or you have, you know, something where you're letting line out, it needs to travel correctly. You also need bite detection. If you have maybe an extra guide on there that makes sure that you don't have sharp angles, you'll actually allow that rod blank with a very sensitive tip out there. It will actually have a little bit more fluid motion because it's following the guide. You know, if this rod blank here just has more of, you know, a flex over like this, you know, we don't have to worry about it so much. So you'll put a guide here, you'll put one here, you can back it up. And depending on where your line comes from, if your line comes from way down here, you got to probably back a guide up and drop him down like this. But if the line comes a little more from here with an inline reel, so this would be like fly, this would be inline, okay? So this guide doesn't need to be there. You could go from, instead of a 20, you could go, you know, from a 20 you could go to a 16 here. And just keep it closer to the blank. I like to keep the fly stuff, or the ice stuff, as close to the blank as possible. And then of course, you know, your guide train could be something like, you know, we'll do a 16, we'll do a 12, we'll do a 10, And then, you know, this could be a 6 or an 8, you know, something like that. And definitely, as Hunter had mentioned, I love the SSRs because when I was fishing outside, which we did a lot of, you know, I can reach out there and pinch that ice, and you're almost like flexing the frame just a little bit, but I can pinch and break the ice out of that frame, and I do not have to worry about, did I just crack the ice, or did I just crack the ceramic, you know? Because in a sense, if you have an SSR, and it's this big, and this is a 16, right? We all know that it's 16 millimeters from the inside of the frame to the inside of the frame. SSR. I'm sure somebody was just screaming at the TV, I'm sure. All right, so SSR, that's a 16, right? So let's say you have a guide, and of course this is very minimal weight, like little weight. Let's say you have a guide that is also a 16 from here to here, right? But it is, let's say, you know, another manufacturer's guide that has a very low grade ceramic in it. That ceramic is now going to be out to here, okay? And all of this is going to be ceramic. It's going to be heavy. That's where all the weight comes from. You know, you probably have similar frame weights, but you got a lot of weight here. And then, of course, you just went from a 16 opening, you know, to maybe a 13 or something like that. Maybe not that much, but now you're losing it. So now you got to go, instead of running a 16, you might have to go now to a 20 to get the same opening of like an SSR. Yeah. So that's just a little bit of spacing, a few things to think about, and guide sizing on the board.
Cool.
So I had to show off my handwriting tonight, you know?
You did good.
Make sure I could spell inline and SSPR. Cool.
All right.
Yeah, what else you got?
How about tips? Just really quick. So we talked about spring bobbers already, which I guess depending on your personal preference, you can still add a tip to your ice rod.
Uh-huh.
And, wrapped around there.
Nice. See how sensitive that was?
Yeah. You can still add a tip, SSR tip, whatever it may be, and then incorporate a spring bobber at a later time. Or you can not put a tip on if you're solely going to be using a spring bobber.
Right.
You don't really need a tip at all.
Right.
A couple different options there. But the spring bobber is, I mean, we see those probably used more than not, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, we did it. You know, we
Yep.
did a lot. And, of course, we have used them a couple different ways. But this one especially, with this spring bobber, we used GT0. So this is just guide tubing. So this might be in an instance where you do not have a, you know, a permanently mounted one. Let's say you get up there to your buddy's fishing spot and he's like, you don't have a spring bobber? What are you thinking, bud? So you can actually pull this tip top off if you would like, put a couple rings on here of GT0, take a little hot melt, slide that tip top right back on there, and then there you go. Now you can mount that. So when I was building a couple of them, I just went ahead and put a couple things of GT0 on there because it didn't really harm it. But I knew that if somebody was like, hey, you got to put a spring bobber on that thing, then I'm ready to go, and it's not wrapped in or incorporated in. Now, I would say, though, the best tip top in the ice fishing game right now is the SSR because there is no other full frame tip top. So the tip top that I showed here, this is just a single wire top, right? You'll see this on fly rods, or you see it on an ice rod. Now, when I mean a full kind of frame wire top, I'm talking about this, right? This looks like and I say a real tip top, but this is a real tip top. You know, something that you would see on a spinning rod, a casting rod. SSR is the only one where you can get a size, what, 6 and 8?
6 and 8, yep.
A size 6 and an 8 ring. In a tube that is down to a 2.5 or a 3?
2.5.
Okay, so nobody else has that. It's SSR, and it doesn't matter if you have LZR or other guides in here like that. If you want a full, true tip top to match, you know, all your other SSRs, or if you just want that instead of a wire top, you've got a couple different colors. You got a 6 and an 8 ring, and it starts at a 2.5.
Correct. Yep. And that includes a 3, 3.5, 4.
Right. In half sizes.
All the way up.
So there's no reason why you should be using any other like full frame tip top. Period. It is what it is. It's it. So yeah.
You got it.
Cool.
Okay. So Mike's question here: do you have to use a tip top, or can you use a running guide for your tip? So Mike, you definitely could use a running guide, but like Chris said, with the option of the SSR going all the way down to a 2.5 tube, which 2.5, majority of ice rods are going to have a 2.5 to probably a 3, 3.5 at most. Yeah. With that option available, I wouldn't use a running guide. I would just use a tip top.
I mean, more power to you. If you want to go through that, I mean, you're into that kind of punishment.
Yeah,
I'm just not into that kind of punishment.
Trying to wrap a running guide, installing a tip top can even be a pain to put on an ice rod.
Sure.
Wrapping a running guide on the tip of your ice rod, I don't want anything to do with that.
I'm out.
Sounds very frustrating.
Can be done though, so it's not saying it can't, but whoa Nelly. So, Daryl's got a question. Could you use a fly reel seat for an ice rod? Yeah, you absolutely could. Daryl, the reason I did not is because I really liked the graphite tubing on here, and I just wanted to tape it on there. Sometimes on a fly reel seat, the threading is like a very fine thread, and I didn't know how that very fine thread, depending on, you know, getting it wet and freezing and whatever, like, I mean, I fly fished in the snow, you know, but the way that it kind of was, and I had enough weight on the back end there with a fly reel already. I just decided not to use a fly reel seat, but you could use a fly reel seat and not use a fly reel in it too. So I have a feeling that might be what you're asking. So yeah, you can absolutely use that in there. Those were just a couple reasons why I just decided to use the carbon tubing. I just thought it looked cool, and all the guys up there were like, yeah, we just tape them on. And I'm like, hey, fine by me. So.
Robert's got a good question. Is it because of the cold that you don't use bait casting reels? We don't have ice fishing around here. Robert, I would honestly say the size of the reel has a lot to do with it. This is what, a 500 size reel, very small spool. Even your fly reel still is probably small compared to, most casting reels.
Well, we're using like 2-pound tests too.
It's the size of the line. It's also, I would say, how you actually hold it too. Yeah. Because a lot of these ice rods are put into a, what do you call it, like a rod holder or whatever.
Yeah, some of them are kind of hung, yeah. Right.
But a lot of times you are sitting there and holding this, right?
Sitting on a bucket.
So having that weight on the top, like you'll see here, all of these reel options are all on the bottom.
Sure.
Maybe that has a little something to do with it. I just don't think a casting reel really fits the bill for ice fishing. So
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I've never seen it. Now, granted, I'd never seen somebody use a fly reel on an ice rod either. And, somebody was like, oh, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, the guide said he does it, and we're paying him to take us fishing. So if he says that he does it, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, other than just like having to, put 2-pound tests and things like that on a bait caster, which you could do. I mean, to be honest with you, when I was putting the 3-pound test, I was using 3-pound Sunline fluoro. I just left all of my fly line and everything on there, and I just wound on like 30 feet. You know, like I just put it right on over the top because we never fished deeper than like 12 feet, and that was it. I didn't need to fill the spool. So if you have a bait caster at the house that you want to try, don't take all your line off. I might just put a piece of tape, just put electrical tape around it and tie off some 3-pound, probably 5-6 cranks of that handle, and you're full with ice fishing line. So you could probably be good to go if you want to try it. Yeah. You know, and then you could also like just tape it on to any one of these too, because you don't really need a reel seat either. You know, it's not going to snatch the reel off. So yeah, give it a shot. Report back.
All right. Well,
that's it.
I think that's going to do it.
Perfect. All right. So, big giveaway.
Yep.
I looked through this all-in-one turnkey ice rod kit, and we leaned on a couple of the experts here, Buzz, some of our ice fishing men and women up north, and we were like, all right, we're going to revamp this kit. Give us what we need in it. So this is dialed in now. Yep. You guys did a great job putting this together. All-in-one turnkey ice rod kit. You mentioned it. You get 3 builds, and you get all the stuff you need. So we'll get a winner for that. And who is it gonna be? Hunter Man, you want to go?
Lucas Erickson from Facebook.
They treated us nice tonight.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They were very nice with the names. Yeah.
Well, I think sometimes people are worried. They're like, "Oh man, my name is John Smith. I'm never going to get picked." Well, there you go, Lucas Erickson.
Yeah, great. So that's we got the CRB Ice Rod Kit went to Daniel Johnson. The MHX Ice Rod Kit went to Jeremy Trotta. And then the all-in-one turnkey ice rod building kit. It's a mouthful. Lucas Erickson from Facebook.
Excellent. That is awesome. Well, 79 of these. It's been going. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We were talking about hard water fishing tonight. You guys hear me complain how much I hate the cold weather. And I'm dreading, there's a cold front coming through Florida right now. I was looking there like, oh man, it's going to be in the 60s. And I was like, thank goodness I brought my sweatsuit. I'm ready to go. Thank you guys for joining us for episode 79. Congratulations to all the winners. Watch the episode. You know, we had a ball filming it. We cannot give enough credit to guys like Buzz, to Vinny and Peter that guided us up there. I mean, you know, we showed up like 4 Florida boys and we're like, cool, take us ice fishing. And I know they were like, oh, bud, you know, I just know they were, but they were a ball to deal with. It's always great when we get to hang out with the Buzz Butters. He's a ball. He's a wealth of knowledge. He's helped us with all of these shows in the past, so we can't help but thank him enough for that. And, of course, he does a lot in the schools and with youth and getting them. And, of course, you've seen him along with all the other great rod building instructors here in the in-person and the kind of the remote classes there. And it's been great. So thank you for joining us. Remember, new website. Bear with us. Trust me, you're going to absolutely love it. It's going to be better, I mean, across the entire board. It's not just like, hey, it's got some cooler pictures. I mean, it's really, really worth it. You know, it's more powerful. It's more reliable. We're talking faster, simplified checkout, things like that. The blog's in there. You know, we had a great blog writer, and you know, he did a great job, and finally there it is. It's on it. That's our gift to you, Guffey. There it is. You get to see it come to fruition. So it's a great site. And YouTube now has 30,000 subscribers. Thank you guys very much for that. Hunter and I are in a lot of these, and we appreciate when you go back and watch them. There's a lot of great resources there. Mm-hmm. Some little tidbits here and there, and again, I told you the guys do a great job of cataloging that stuff. So, as always, for the Facebookers out there, the Rod Builders Workshop, Mudhole Live Rod Builders Workshop, it is the biggest, it is the best group on Facebook, and that's because of you guys. So, we're going to see y'all in a couple weeks. It'll be in October, and for the next show, that'll be the Big 80 show, 80. We've got a few things up our sleeve maybe for that one. Something we haven't talked about, I believe. between that one and the next coming shows, we're going to try to branch out a little bit. It's going to be cool. And if you ever have any suggestions that you would like us to do, throw them in there. If they're good, we'll use them. If not, we'll just tell you thanks for giving us a submission, and we'll move on. So, all right. So we had Steve, Brooke. I saw Tom was here tonight, enjoying the show, enjoying the green room. I know TikTok was in the building. Guffey was here. You know, we had Taylor. It was a good show.
Yeah.
I was feeling pretty good. So, of course, as always, we had Uncle Phil on the camera. Jay was on the ones and twos. Hunter McCamey's my left-hand man. Guys, I'm Chris Adams. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for episode 79. We'll see y'all soon.
Thanks for watching.